If you were to ask me what franchise I thought has the best user-generated content, my mind would point straight to one franchise, that of which being LittleBigPlanet, a game franchise created by Media Molecule and published by Sony. And today, we're going to cover how it was conceived. All the way back in 2005, four friends along the names of Mark Healy, Dave Smith, Alex Evans, and Kareem Atouni worked for Lionhead Studios and created a game known as Ragdoll Kung Fu, a game notable for being the very first third-party published game to ever release on Steam. Ragdoll Kung Fu's release was fundamental for the four's career paths, because it kickstarted their idea of founding their own studio and making their own games. As they left Lionhead Studios to found their own company, they decided to go by the name of Media Molecule. And they were given the rare, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to pitch a game to Sony. This then allowed them to create an early prototype of a 2D physics-based platformer game that they had dubbed Craftworld. This pitch was unique in the sense that it wasn't presented using PowerPoint, but instead was a live playable prototype to show off their working ideas on what they were wanting the game to feel and play like. This prototype is the basis for the LittleBigPlanet we all know and love today. The meeting with Sony, which was originally scheduled for 45 minutes, went on for 3 whole hours, with Sony happily funding the development of the game for 6 months. After some time of development, the team landed on the decision to include the ability to allow players to play, create, and share their own custom-created levels with the community, all done within the game itself. This later became the basis for the tagline of the game. Around 2007, Sony approached Media Molecule again to develop LittleBigPlanet for the PlayStation 3 as an exclusive title for the system, being heavily backed by the president of Sony Computer Entertainment Worldwide Studios. Upon its reveal, many people became enamored by the game and intrigued at what its potential may be. The game released on the 27th of October in 2008 to critical acclaim and went on to sell 4.5 million copies worldwide. The game's main plot revolves around Sackboy, a little sack person you can customize to your liking, being guided by the omnipotent narrator voiced by Stephen Fry, traversing around the world to various different locations, including rural England, African jungles, the land of the dead from Mexican culture, Mexican deserts, New York City, Japanese Zen gardens, ancient Indian temples, and a Russian snowy tundra. Along his journey, various characters get abducted by a small character named the Collector. After Sackboy has released everyone from their cages, Sackboy defeats the Collector and he is forgiven by everyone because the ending of the game is meant to encourage players to try making their own levels with the inbuilt level creator. By the end of the game's online lifespan, it had amassed over 1 million user-created levels. Feeling accomplished with this, Media Molecule decided to sit back and help work on extra content for the game after its release. But it wasn't too long until they decided that they wanted to make more content, bigger and better than the last. But it ended up that their ideas were too big to fit in the original game, which is what led them to decide to create a sequel. But before I talk about that, I have to talk about the game that released between Little Big Planet 1 and Little Big Planet 2. Little Big Planet for the PlayStation Portable. Little Big Planet for the PlayStation Portable started development before the very first Little Big Planet had even started finishing its development, and was being developed by Sony Computer Entertainment Studio Cambridge, with assistance from Media Molecule. The plot of the game is a direct sequel to the very first games, with Sackboy going on a vacation to visit even more places around the world, including the Australian outback, Chinese temples, Iran Bazaar, Egypt deserts, the Alps mountain range in Europe, and Hollywood in America. This release was astonishing for being able to run on significantly weaker hardware, even with the limitations that they had to apply, especially when it came to the level creator, as they had not cut that out of the game to compromise for it, being on weaker hardware. While it didn't sell as well as the original game had, it still performed quite well, selling an undisclosed amount of copies, but being one of the best-selling games for the system. This would mark Sackboy's very first foray into the handheld gaming market, and it would certainly not be his last. Little Big Planet 2 started off development as an expansion to the original game, featuring brand new content and features, including a brand new overhaul to the game's inbuilt logic system. But this proved to be too much of a problem to build on top of the original logic system with it still intact. So the team decided to create a brand new game instead, fully backwards compatible with the original and its content. The team sought to expand the original definition of the game by turning it from a game into a game platform itself, seeking to have limitless potential in what users can create and share. Not only did the team improve upon their work by creating brand new content, but they also created a brand new cohesive story with voice acting and danger and relevance to the game itself. The game released on the 18th of January 2011, receiving praise from critics and fans alike for being an overall amazing improvement over the first game and for including all the content from the first game for the users who own it. It's estimated that it managed to sell an astonishing 1.09 million copies in its lifespan, and it was considered one of PlayStation's most popular games in 2011. The story follows Sackboy as he builds an alliance to destroy the new threat called the Negativitron, an evil vacuum from space. Along the way, the alliance receives an army of Sackbots and animal robots. They eventually defeat the Negativitron, but only after they discover that the Negativitron was made from their bad traits. Larry da Vinci's short tempers, Victoria von Bathysphere's insecurity, Clive Hanford's depression, Avalon Centrifuge's vanity, Eve Silver Paragorica's self-absorption, and Dr. Herbert Higginbotham's insanity. After they defeated the Negativitron, the Alliance reconciled and improved upon each other by changing themselves to the better and removing these negative traits. Following the success of Little Big Planet 2 on the PS3, Sony decided that they wanted a new Little Big Planet game on their upcoming handheld system, the PlayStation Vita, being first announced in January of 2011 under the name of Little Big Planet Vita alongside the reveal of the new system. The game was developed primarily by Tarsier Studios and Double 11, featuring a brand new plot in a completely new and unique location on a planet called Carnivalia, with new features relating to the Vita's unique touchscreen and touchpad controls. The plot revolves around a puppeteer who is believed to control wooden puppets called the Hollows, dangerous enemies of Carnivalia. The Hollows were created by the puppeteer as replacements for the puppets that he threw away after being booed at a circus event. In order to stop this threat, Sackboy must travel across Carnivalia to reach the puppeteer's spooky mansion, and upon arriving there, Sackboy finds out that the puppeteer is called Franklin and is not the threat that they are facing, but in fact the Hollows are, as they were an unwanted creation made during a failed attempt to recreate his puppet friends. Due to growing bitterness from being stuck behind the scenes all the time, he had decided to throw them away. But when he later decided to try and find them, he shed a tear that brought them to life. Franklin becomes ecstatic about reuniting with his revived friends, but they begin to bicker, causing one of them to slip and grab hold of someone in a hilarious way, causing the group of friends to laugh so hard that the remaining Hollows revert to their original Sack personage forms. Due to the PlayStation Vita's poor sales, LittleBigPlanet on the PlayStation Vita was a game that went past most fans' radars, thus being one of the more highly sought after games in the franchise nowadays, for being exclusive to the rare and hard to find PlayStation Vita. No sales documentation are available about LittleBigPlanet for the PlayStation Vita, but without a doubt it's most likely the worst selling game in the franchise due to being on a device that rarely anyone owns to this day. It's 2013. Sony is announcing their next big generational console, the PlayStation 4, and Sony decides that they want a new LittleBigPlanet game for the upcoming system. But Media Molecule has stepped down from developing for the LittleBigPlanet franchise to work on their own brand new dreams. So Sumo Digital, a studio known for developing the Sonic All-Star Racing games and the Doctor Who adventure games, stepped in to develop LittleBigPlanet titles going forward, which wasn't a lot of titles. Unfortunately, due to rushed development to get the game out on time to be a launch title for the PlayStation 4, whilst also releasing for the PlayStation 3 on the same day, Sumo had to release the game in a buggy state. Even with the help from Media Molecule where they needed it most, wasn't enough to save LittleBigPlanet 3 from being one of the most infamous games in the franchise for having major game-breaking bugs and glitches. Over time, thankfully, these bugs and glitches were patched and fixed, but that didn't stop people from experiencing these issues. Due to the fact that the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4 were coded in completely different ways, Sumo had to prioritize working on two different versions of the game at the same time, causing the PlayStation 3 version to be the more unstable version on release. But it too thankfully received patches and fixes to these game-breaking issues. This time, the story is changed up dramatically, as Sackboys pulled through a dimensional portal from Craftworld to a brand new planet named Bunkum, by a dim-witted character played by Hugh Laurie, a neat little homage to Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie's comedy skits. Named Newton, he then begins to tell the tale of Bunkum, and how it was nearly ravaged by three ominous titans, but were defeated by three stupendous heroes with their speed, their power, and their grace. These three heroes managed to seal the Titans away and faded into legend. But Newton reveals to the player that Nana Pud, an old lady, is planning to release the Titans just before bedtime. But this turns out to be a ruse, as Newton was planning to release the Titans himself, as Nana Pud, Newton's mum, was the defender of the Titans' prison, and Newton used Sackboy to weaken her defenses for him, for he sought to use the Titans to improve on creativity instead of destroying it, but he ended up being possessed by the Titans, causing havoc and destruction wherever he went, and thus Nana Pud decided to send Sackboy off on a journey across Bunkum to find the three heroes, but not before finding their marbles first. He traversed Manglewood, a movie-making swamp with actor Marlon Random, the Ziggurat, a snowy Russian-based location with papier-mâché, the Pope. And finally, the Bunkum Lagoon with Pinky, the Queen of Bunkum. Once Sackboy had found their marbles and released the three heroes, they decided to infiltrate Newton's Spider Fortress to defeat the Titans once and for all. But Sackboy got captured by Newton, and the three heroes had to band together to shut down Sackboy's impregnable prison. Once he'd been released, the final remaining Titan still possessing Newton released itself to control a massive mechanical beast to try and kill the five. Having snapped out of possession, Newton finally makes himself useful and helps the four heroes defeat the last Titan, as they succeed in capturing it, but the fortress is already self-destructing, and they end up falling out of the sky. But when all hope seemed lost, Newton's father, Captain Pud, saves all five of them with his airship, and gives Newton a good scolding for releasing the Titans. After returning to Stitcham Manor, Newton restores the dimensional portal to send the four heroes back home to Craftworld, where this marks the end of the Little Big Planet story. Little Big Planet 3 was the best-selling game out of the entire franchise, selling over 5.54 million copies worldwide, being a smash hit with fans despite its flaws. Many fans loved this game, but it wouldn't be long for this world before major tragedy struck. The unfortunate timely demise of Little Big Planet. In early March of 2021, players began to notice issues with the Little Big Planet servers, as they experienced connection issues and accessing most online features. This was the result of an unknown third party attacking the servers with a distributed denial of service attack, otherwise known as a DDoS attack, causing the servers to become overloaded with information, causing major issues and permanent damage to parts of the servers. This caused Sony to have to shut down the servers in March and again a second time in May that same year to address the issues present with the servers. This, however, was not the first time that the Little Big Planet servers had been used for malicious intent due to major security flaws or vulnerabilities. And it certainly wasn't the last, because later that year in September, Sony decided to permanently shut down the servers for Little Big Planet PS Vita, Little Big Planet 1, Little Big Planet 2, and Little Big Planet 3 for the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation Vita systems. The Little Big Planet 3 servers for the PlayStation 4 would remain online and players would still be able to access the content uploaded from the PlayStation 3 versions before the shutdown on PlayStation 4. The reason for this permanent shutdown was due to the amount of permanent damage done to the servers during this attack, costing Sony too much money to be able to manage or fix. But it wouldn't be long before Little Big Planet 3 PS4 servers were targeted by more DDoS attacks. It was in January of 2024 that the suspected second wave of DDoS attacks hit, causing Sony to temporarily shut down the servers that month, only to reopen later again, and confirming in April of that same year that the servers for Little Big Planet on PS4 would be permanently shut down late that year, and every version of the game would be delisted off of digital storefronts, including the extra downloadable content. This caused outrage amongst fans because it truly meant the death of the franchise with no future in sight. The reason for this shutdown was because there was extreme security exploits that allowed hackers to falsely ban any user on the PlayStation Network service Whether they had played LittleBigPlanet or not, and once October had rolled around, Sony had confirmed that LittleBigPlanet and its subsequent DLC would be delisted forever, taking effect on October 31st. And without hesitation, the servers were shut down for good, causing over 10 million user-generated content to simply disappear within a single day due to Sony's negligence to fix security vulnerabilities. And aside from a mediocre 3D platformer game, almost completely unrelated to LittleBigPlanet, releasing in 2020, there has been no new information on LittleBigPlanet or what its future may hold, meaning that the series is almost certainly dead, for good, with no revival in sight. A truly sad ending.